everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Slumber Party podcast. I am Amanda Jewson, live from the most luxurious of locations, the back seat of my car, folks, because we have the renovation that just isn't ending. I am not complaining, but my house is literally a construction site, and you'd be very mad to listen to that podcast. So we're in my car. Thank goodness for cars. And I'm super excited today to speak with Caitlin about a topic that you've all been messaging me about, which is the dreaded, or not so dreaded, depending on who you are, 2-to-1 nap transition. So welcome, Caitlin.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. And you look amazing. You're like so put together, and I'm in my car. So good for you. You like brought it.
This is like my once a year getting ready.
Yeah, fair. I feel like Cat and Nat right now, except without a Nat and beside 2 child booster seats. Same. So why don't you jump in? What I'd love for you to do is, tell me a little bit about what's going on, what you've tried, what you haven't, and I'll jump in and ask any further questions, and we can kind of go from there.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. So I have a son, Cooper. He is almost 18 months old. He'll be 18 months on the 25th. And he is still doing 2 naps a day. But A, I'm getting feedback from daycare and things like that he needs to move to 1 nap. And
Okay.
B, we're having some difficulty at night getting him down with the 2 naps.
Okay.
And so I'm trying to figure out what's the right balance, because he turns into a holy terror if we only give him 1, because we've tried that.
Right.
And then with 2, we've ended up with, a kid that's up until 11:30 at night.
Right. And when you have tried to go down to 1 nap, can you talk to me a little bit about what you did?
So I'm limited in what I can do with the daycare side of it, because they can only do a certain amount of time. But when I'm doing it at home, I try and extend that nap for a little bit longer, and then have it push it a little bit later. So that way there's not quite as much time between the 2 naps or between the sleeping. And so that on weekends has worked a little bit better, but between the last hour and a half, at least before he goes to bed, it's just like Satan's child has come into play.
Okay. So it sounds like you're trying like a kind of a gradual process where you push that first nap a little, and then you'll try to see if a second nap happens. And sometimes if it doesn't, he's kind of off the rails.
Yeah.
Okay. And has daycare tried any sort of solutions there?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I would say, I'll break this down in a very roundabout way because it is the podcast, and I talk in circles just so everyone understands the suggestions. But when we're thinking about moving from 2 naps to 1, I think that this is, next to moving to no naps at all, one of the harder transitions that you're going to make. Generally, because it's very, very hard to go from 4 to 5 hours of wake time, or even 3.5 to up to 6 or 7, sometimes depending on the length of your nap, your waking, and bedtime. And so for a lot of kids, this transition can take up to 4 to 6 weeks to really solidify. So it would be normal for that holy terror thing to be a big part of your process while you are making that transition. Before we do that, 2 questions for you. What time is bedtime and what time is wake time? Like on your best day, not on the night where it's taking him 400 years. Like, what is a typical night?
So typical, honestly, is about 9:45.
Okay.
And he is straight through till 8:30.
Okay. So we're getting about 11 hours of sleep, which is awesome. And then what time would daycare offer the 1 nap?
So the first nap is at about 1:45.
Mm-hmm.
And then she will let him sleep like she lets him sleep as long as he will, but apparently he won't sleep longer than about an hour to an hour and 20 minutes there. And then I do his second nap essentially right when he gets home with me, which is at about 5:45 or 6.
Okay.
And that one I limit to 30 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. So actually, you're in I think what's probably a problem with not a problem. How do I say this? What's continuing the issue for you potentially right now is the idea that if you were in a perfect world where you can control when the nap time is, we could probably balance this day a little bit better. But because his nap would only be at 1 o'clock, that for him is 9, 10, 11, 12, 4 hours after sleeping, right? So if you were to do 2 naps, that would probably be enough to get you that one decent 1 hour nap, right? The issue is if he does have only that 1 hour nap, he's going to be up from 2 to 9:45, which is an insane amount of time. Now, if we were to move to a 1 nap situation, we want that kind of smack in the middle of the day. So, most of my clients are waking anywhere between 6 and 7 a.m. You have a little bit of a later body clock thing that's happening, so it's a little bit trickier. But most of my kids are waking between 6 and 7 a.m., and we'd be offering that nap at 12. So that's at least a 5 to 6 hour wake window. With that added wake window, you're going to get an increase of sleep pressure. So sleep pressure, for those of you who are new to the podcast, is the chemical soup that happens in your brain that makes you feel tired. And sleep pressure does need to be considered when thinking about nap time and nap length. And in that way, that if you imagine, for those of you who are watching, I have a balloon full or in our brains that fill up with that pressure to want to fall asleep. So it fills up the balloon. Now, by the time he's at 1, that's maybe 3/4 of the way full. It's not quite full. So full enough to definitely let out some air when he sleeps, but not full enough to get to that 2 or 3 hour mark, right? That would require more sleep pressure. He's just not getting it. And then what is happening is he is building up a lot of sleep pressure, likely by 5 or 6 with you. He is a little bit snoozy, tired. But if you think about that balloon again, okay, we go back to the balloon. He has fallen asleep even for 30 minutes. Even if you get a 10-minute nap out of some kids sometime, that balloon is done. It's like halfway empty already. Literally like a balloon. Like when you let out air, it's very rare that you can be like, dee, right? It like a lot comes out all at once. So then you're saying, okay, go to bed at 9:45. And he's like, absolutely not. Like half of my air is gone. I have nothing in the balloon. That is super significant and probably something that is going to hold you back. Whereas, is daycare flexible at all in terms of nap timing?
Sorry?
Is daycare flexible at all in terms of the time of the nap?
Yeah. So, I mean, the daycare is fine with it. It's a home daycare.
Oh, great.
So he's only in daycare for 4 hours a day.
Okay. Awesome. So we could be pretty flexible.
Yeah.
Okay. What are his daycare hours right now?
So he's in daycare from 1:30 in the afternoon until 5:30.
And he's having his nap there, his first nap there. Okay. That's amazing that you're able to kind of drop him off and be like, here's the nap, bye. That's so good.
Essentially, yeah, because my husband works from 2 to 10, which is why he has the later bedtime, because I'm up and ready to go to work. And then my husband gets up and he needs to sleep in a little bit longer to be a functioning human being.
100%.
Which is why Cooper gets up later.
Right. Totally. Okay. So what I think could be helpful then is if we want to maintain your late circadian rhythm, and this would be worth, again, I'm answering this in a very long roundabout way. If we were having a conversation, I could help you in like 10 minutes. But I want people to understand the suggestions. So the big thing is that, and which kind of sucks, is that most people have their kids in some sort of childcare or daycare around the age of like 12 months plus. We are beholden to their timings. And, you know, a home daycare is so great for the reason that they usually are pretty flexible with the parents and they can be like, okay, let's do this. Like, that's fine. We don't care, which is so awesome. But if you're in a daycare center, you have nap times, which is like 12:30. Most kids will have lunch at around 11:45. Nap time is at 12:30. And then what is tough is that when you have a child with a circadian rhythm that is later or earlier for that matter, you're going to have issues in both areas, right? Because it might be that the wake window is too long in the morning for the child. In your case, it's too short for the child. And then you're going to have an overtired baby either in the morning or in the afternoon. Apologies, I'm uncomfortable in this car seat. Who knew? So the impulse would be like, okay, let's switch this circadian rhythm right away. Let's change it. It's not always that easy. So if you were to say, okay, I want my baby to go to bed earlier today, let me tell you, that's not going to happen. And in fact, you're going to get a lot more crying than you would want because your baby is like, their body doesn't produce the same amount of hormones at that time to allow them to fall asleep. So for those of you who are listening and you think, well, I am Caitlin, except my daycare does make me have that nap at 12:30. You're going to be in a position where you're going to, in addition to probably waking up your child in the morning at an earlier time, you're going to want to pull back on bedtime very gently. It's not like I have clients all the time who get into a sticky situation where their baby is going to bed at like 10:30 and they're like, we want 7, but like 2.5 hours. No matter what we do, that baby's like, I'm just not ready. Just like you wouldn't be ready. It's like jet lag, right? Your body isn't ready. So I want to be very careful to advise, you know, if you are in a situation where, let's say, you can't choose your nap time, but you want to make that nap time work at your daycare, you got to do it slow. You got to do it really slow. And that might be waking 30 minutes earlier, putting to bed 30 minutes earlier, until, like, I would say every week, every 3 days, depending on what your child is doing. And that first time and that first day you wake and put to bed earlier, that might not be an easy transition, but you got to keep at it until it does get easy. And then we pull back again, half an hour, until you're at a point where that nap is ideally falling halfway between your day, which is what I'd like for you. So, you know, I think for most people, that's usually a 6 to 7 a.m. wake up, and that's usually a 6 to 8 p.m. bedtime, roughly. Okay. That's typically what I see even coming in. Now, back to your problem specifically. What we're going to do, if we can, is if he's waking up at about 8:30, I bet he's not even feeling like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2. Yeah, like I think nap would probably be best around like 2, which is about 6 hours in. Going down at that 2 o'clock, he might only sleep an hour and 20 minutes or so. On those days, you can offer a slightly earlier bedtime, because I think that little mini cat nap in the afternoon is still too much for him. So when it is going to happen, you're going to deal with these like 10, 11 o'clock bedtimes, which is, I'm sure, something you don't love. So what I would do is, if he does an hour and a half or hour 20 minutes, fine. Over time, that will 100% lengthen. So for many people, it doesn't lengthen in the first week and they panic. They go back to 2 naps. Then they're in this like limbo of kind of what you're in, or do we 2 naps or 1, 2 naps or 1? If you're in a part of life where you're constantly having this issue of like, will my child fall back to sleep? Will he go to bed at all at night, or is he a monster? I would probably lean on the side of, okay, he'll be a monster, but just for a little bit, not forever. So until that nap lengthens and he learns how to have a longer nap, you might have to deal with a little bit of a monster. But again, it's kind of like training that body clock. Like, this is when sleep happens, and he will get past it probably in about 2 to 3 weeks of consistent, ongoing repetition of that schedule in his body. Yeah. I had a client a couple weeks ago that was kind of doing the opposite, where the child wasn't falling asleep, and so they were pushing the child so far, from the baby was getting up at 6, and they were trying to put the baby down at 2:30 so that they would avoid the nap time, because she was taking so long to get down, and then she would only take 30-minute naps, and it was a disaster. But I was like, no. So we wrote out a plan for the daycare of like, the baby has to go to bed at this time. This is when it happens. This will take 3 weeks. And it did. It always goes there. So the suggestions for you would be, A, push out that nap a little bit, have a nice balanced day on both ends. And on the days where it does seem like he had a crappy nap, putting to bed like 30 minutes to an hour earlier shouldn't cause you too much of an issue. People are worried about early bedtime creating early wakings. For sure, sometimes that does happen. But early wakings may also happen if the child is overtired. More times than not, you're going to have a child take the first part of sleep, or the second part that he's missing or not quite getting, and tack it on to that earlier bedtime, like that first hour, and still with a similar wake time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, is there like a hard and fast rule of what age you should be going down to one nap?
There's no hard and fast rules in anything, obviously.
Okay.
But what my big thing is when there starts to be, this is a great question actually, and you reminded me to come back to signs of the one nap. Signs of one nap tend to be that the child rejects that second nap over and over and over again. And what I have a big asterisk around this, because around 12 months, all kids reject that second nap for a week. And everyone is like, it's time for one nap. It's time for one nap. No. It's just a phase. I'm not saying it's not time to go down to the one nap, but I'm saying let's give it a week or two to be sure that it's not just a developmental leap. So I would say that number one is that they reject that second nap, that the first nap is lengthening quite significantly. So maybe it was only an hour before and now it's getting closer to 2. That shows that they're ready to kind of have those longer stretches. And when you're experiencing exactly what you're experiencing, lots of bedtime silliness, when you're at a point where, and this goes for any nap transition, by the way, people from like 3 to 2, 4 to 3, all of the nap transitions, when you are at a point of trying to get this second nap in always, or when you do, bedtime is insane, it's time to cut it. That goes also for your older kids that are actually moving out of the nap. So, closer to 3, I see kids who have a 30-minute nap and they're up till 10 p.m. and that's not when their parents want them to go to bed. So then I like to answer your question in the very roundabout way I did, is when it becomes a problem for you, when it's a pain in the ass to keep doing it, you might want to think about transitioning. When it's no longer just something that happens naturally, then, why bother? Like sometimes I've had I've had 5-month-olds on 2 naps. I've had 8-month-olds on 3 naps, and that's just what that child needs in that moment. So I'm a big fan of being responsive and not prescriptive, which I think does drive quite a few people crazy because they want a very specific answer. But there is no hard and fast rule. And, if I don't know, is this your only child? Do you have other children?
So yeah, I have an older, but he's 10.
Right, you'll probably notice that those kids are so different from each other, like siblings. Like my daughters napped so differently, and what they needed was so differently, or so different. So no hard and fast rules. Those are the signs that are pretty standard amongst any age. I will say that I see most kids transition between 14 and 18 months.
Okay.
So it's right on time.
Yes, fair enough. Goodbye dinner prep time.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's the other thing. There does become a whole other slew of things where, ideally, this is what we'd like, but ideally, we have a very long or a much longer stretch of time in the middle of the day where you could do some meal prep on the weekend or something, or you might need to prep dinner the night before. But it is, I know, like sometimes a dropping of the second nap. Like I get a lot of parents in your age, or they'll call it like 2 years, and they're like, I have to work in that second nap, so I don't know what to do. I'm like, I also don't know what to do. That's when you might want to like think about, I know it's like pandemic times, but hiring a 12-year-old babysitter to come in your house and play with your kid while you make dinner or something. 12-year-old babysitters, with supervision of you, of course, are the best. They have so much energy. Maybe not in pandemic times, but that's a really big helpful thing. Parents who go from one nap to no nap also really mourn that. But it usually gets to the point where the bedtime battles are such a giant pain in the ass. They're like, fine, whatever. But in that case, I would also recommend doing a quiet time of, having your child in their room for, a set amount of time where everyone kind of like chills out and does their own thing.
Okay.
Awesome. Was that helpful?
It was very helpful. Yes. Thank you.
Oh, good. And I'm also so happy that, like, I know you applied, but it takes me so long to get through everyone's things, and I'm doing it in bunches and batches. And I was like, I really hope by the time we can get on the call, this is still a problem for her because I really want to talk about it. It's such an issue. So thank you for continuing to have this problem as well.
No problem.
Awesome. All right. Well, everyone, that's another edition of the Slumber Party podcast. You can check out more tips and tricks on other episodes of the Slumber Party podcast. You may want to check out my nap transition episode, as well as the my Instagram feed, instagram.com/babiesbestsleep, the blog, babiesbestsleep.com/blog. And as always, if you need to book a discovery call with myself or a member of my team, you can do that at babiesbestsleep.com quickly and easily. We'll get to the bottom of your problem too. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks for joining me in my car today. Bye.